while you evacuate. Do not return until an official all-clear message is given by Civil Defence. The National Crisis Management Centre has been activated, as the Minister has said, in the Beehive in Wellington. All Civil Defence emergency management groups are active and closely monitoring the situation across the regions in support of their communities. Tsunami sirens in some areas have been used to advise of the warning. Regarding the emergency mobile alert, a series of EMAs, emergency mobile alerts, were issued to areas under land threat this morning, asking people to evacuate out of all tsunami zones to high ground or inland. The first alert was sent to the initial areas under the land threat on the east coast of the North Island. The warning was then extended to include the top of the west coast of the North Island. Only those in areas under land threat were sent the emergency mobile alert message. Thank you. That concludes my update. Minister.
We're happy to take any questions.
Minister, can you let us know if there was any warning that these quakes would be coming?
Look, the advice that we received is that the information came in from this morning, but I might turn to Bill Fry, who is from GNS, who has been monitoring the indices for us.
No, there's no way we can predict when the earthquakes happen. So the first of this morning came without any significant warning. Then after that, when we see a big earthquake like this, we know that we're more likely to see another earthquake after that. So we're particularly vigilant after the first earthquake, looking for the follow-on earthquakes.
Can you explain how the three are connected and why they're doing it, and also maybe a comment on how unusual it is to see earthquakes of this size?
Yeah. So I can comment on how the first and the last are related, because we have a pretty good feel for the physics and the science around that. The second middle earthquake, it's a bit more tenuous, so it happened quite far away, I think 1,000 kilometers away from the first earthquake. When we have a big earthquake like the first one at 2 o'clock this morning, we know in the region that's very proximal to that earthquake, the nearby region, we know it's highly likely to have another earthquake. Usually that's not bigger than the first, which is what we've seen today, but it does happen. It's not unexpected. And then when you get farther and farther away, you have to invoke other mechanisms that are a little less certain, certainly in the early hours of a response.
How long have you been doing this, and how unusual is this in your experience?
I've been in New Zealand for 13 years responding to large earthquakes and tsunamis. This is the first time we've had this particular sequence, but every sequence we get, it's usually complicated, and we usually learn from it, and that's what I expect we'll do today.
Could you please clarify what the message is for Aucklanders who are near beaches?
Yeah. Look, so the messaging is, all of the messaging is available on the Civil Defence website. There has not been any notification that they need to evacuate, only in those areas where they have been required to do so.
That's correct. Auckland is not within the regions that are being asked to evacuate. Auckland does have a beach and marine threat, as the Minister says, and they need to stay off the beach and out of the water.
Did the warning systems work overnight? There didn't seem to be tsunami sirens or that kind of thing?
Yeah, look, so the information that we've received this morning is that the system has held up, but as you'll be aware, with any event we always undertake reviews, and we're constantly reviewing throughout the course as we're going as well. The warning system that went out this morning, because we had that first lot at 2:30, it was very targeted to those areas where there may be risk to life. So it was to quite smaller groupings. That obviously over the course of the day has been expanded as we got to that third earthquake. The advice that we've received is that the warning system is adequate, but I also too want to make the note that there have all of the media have played a significant role today in informing and keeping people very abreast of what it is that they should be doing, and I need to acknowledge the important role you've all played. The NEMA system doesn't operate in isolation. It requires people to carry that information, of which this team here has been exceptional stewards of. So where we look to in terms of the real impacts on the ground, do people know what they're meant to be doing? By and large, the responses and the feedback that we're getting is yes. When we're looking to those areas that needed to evacuate, by and large, when we're on the phones and talking to those, it seems to be that people understand very clearly what they need to do. So if we look at it as a system whole, Has today's exemplified that the system is working? It seems to be that's the case, but obviously we'll be doing ongoing reviews to ensure that that is the case.
Did any of those sirens have gone off and didn't?
Perhaps I could make a comment on that, Minister. So the sirens are not operated nor activated by national authorities. Where sirens exist, they belong to and are operated by either local civil defence emergency management groups or possibly councils. So that is something for us to look at afterwards. But the operation of the sirens is not is handled by NEMA.
Do you have an idea or prediction about how extreme it could get, what sort of waves we might see?
Yeah, look, we'll turn to Bill in a second for that. And the indices that have come out in terms of the mapping that's been provided, in those lower lying areas, the predictions based on the science that they've provided is that under 1 metre that will get to that swell. But for the areas that we've been asked to evacuate, that's where we've got a window, if you will, of a surge that may be between 1 metre to 3 metres, which is why we've asked for that evacuation. But Bill, you might like to add something there.
Sure. We know from previous experience around the globe that time saves lives. So the quicker we can issue advice, the better prepared we are to make sure that people stay safe. So what we do in a response like this is we use the earliest available data to issue a forecast. And that forecast necessarily has a large range of uncertainty. And that's where that 1 to 3 meters comes in. As time progresses, as we're right now, as we speak, we're collecting more and more data, we're updating our forecasts, and then the uncertainty of that model gets smaller. So as you just heard, right now the land threat is between a 1 and 3 meter threshold.
Are you people who are expecting any greater further earthquakes?
We're not expecting them, but it's certainly possible. So as I said, when you get a big earthquake, you're more likely to have another big earthquake, but it's the unlikely scenario to have something bigger than the 8.1 we've just seen.
People who have evacuated and are waiting up on higher ground, you've asked them to stay there until we know it's ready to go. Do you have any idea around the time frame that they could be waiting, and what are we looking for in terms of, knowing that we've got the all clear to go?
Yeah.
To answer that first, no, we don't have particular timeframes. They could be quite long, could be quite lengthy, which is why we're asking people to really heavily rely on the broadcasting from media, on the messaging from civil defence. Bill and his team are working exceptionally hard to ensure that the science is robust, that we have mitigated the risk to life before we can enable people to go home. And so it may even be as lengthy as sometime this afternoon. Bill, you may want to add something further there.
Sure. As we do improve the models, you might expect some of those threat bands, the coastal threat bands, to change. So rather than being a point in time where we say all of New Zealand's coastlines are completely safe, return to your normal activities, you might see an alteration of that map where you see the areas that have the highest threat perhaps change levels, and the other threat bands change levels as well.
Could you please run through what happened sort of at 2:30 in the morning and sort of what the response was and what was activated and sort of go through what happened?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we're in the hands of Roger Ball at that point.
Sure. So 2:30 in the morning. I think one of the things to point out about that very first earthquake is that a lot of people felt it all around New Zealand, and that's normal. That's what we expect, and that's what we base our public education campaign on, which is the first warning is often what we call natural, the felt effect. Okay, so I got woken up, our duty team gets woken up. There is already a 24/7 awake capability, which is based on the Geohazards Monitoring Centre operated by GNS, and they are on it straight away. Our duty team assembles and we activate our National Crisis Management Centre here below the beehive. So it's a constant flow of trying to assess data and get public information out, and as the Minister indicated earlier on, it's a constant tension between speed and accuracy, because we want to get information out in a timely manner, but we also want to make sure that what we're saying is useful and doesn't lead to a yo-yo effect or having to unwind the information.
No, there's no people on the Kermadix right now, from what we understand, but do we have any idea of how bad the damage is to any of the kind of infrastructure that we do have there at this point?
Yeah, we haven't received any information to date that I'm aware of a damage assessment on the islands. Over the course, though, of the next period, once the emergency and any kind of emergent risks are contained, then we'll be able to undertake that risk assessment.
About 1,000 kilometres away, but does the sea floor, it seems to be kind of a trench between here and here. Does that change the kind of wave modelling?
It does, in quite a complicated way, which I'll get you to explain. I couldn't explain it prior.
Yeah, it sure does. The waves we see hitting New Zealand are a function of the wave that was started where the earthquake was and the path it takes to get to our coastlines. So in this deep water of the trench, the waves move very, very quickly. And that means that those waves arriving in, say, East Cape are arriving before those in North Cape that take a slower path. So the seafloor absolutely makes an impact. And then as waves get into shallower and shallower shorelines, then they start to get taller and taller and slower and slower.
Minister, communities who are up on hill, have you had any advice around, food supplies, water supplies, getting out to those people given the time in which they need to wait there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in touch with a number of the local civil defence teams to check on what types of supplies are being provided. My understanding is that there are multiple resources that have been stood up to service the communities, and that's something that we'll be, I guess, checking on throughout the course of the day, depending on the length of time that people are required to be up in those islands.
There have been some reports of the Waitangi River and the Whangarei town basin emptying, and the water that has remained there has changed colour. Can you confirm that? And if it has done that, what does that mean?
You want to make a comment? I'll make a first comment. We are still gathering that information and impact data as it is coming in, but perhaps Bill might have a general comment.
Yeah, I haven't heard any of that information, but we did flag the area, the coastal zone around Whangarei as one of the places early on that might be subject to some of our biggest waves in New Zealand. It's not outside our expectations to see changes in the currents there and changes in the water behaviour.
Minister, Mr. Fry mentioned time saves lives. This morning, were lives at risk, and are lives still at risk?
Yeah, look, when those evacuation notices go out, that's when it is considered that there is a risk to life. So when you are asked to evacuate, that's at the forefront of our team's notifications to people, and you don't ask people to do that lightly. So you would have heard, for example, earlier this morning, there was a range of comments about some people getting notices and some not. The assessment was done based on that risk to life component. If you were assessed as maybe it being a marine threat only, so where we could see that there was going to be some impact in the waters, but it wouldn't be so significant that it would cause risk to life, you probably didn't get the siren going off. But if you were within that area, it was a loud penetrating siren that got people up, and then obviously that caused people to move into action.
Given that we're in the middle of a lockdown.
And just in terms of a message to Kiwis who are feeling really anxious, who are feeling really worried about this, what do you say to them?
Yeah, I think, look, that's absolutely natural to feel at the moment. The messaging that's been coming out all day is very likely to cause high levels of anxiety. What we're asking people is to try and stay calm, touch people that you love, check on the people that you know might be most at risk, and to really just listen to the advice that is coming through. There is very good messaging available to people. I know that within the communities that have been evacuated, there are hands-on deck volunteers through to professionals that are there to assist, to be able to provide that kind of hands-on, guidance that may be required for some. So please do reach out. It's absolutely natural in these times to feel high degrees of anxiety, and there's plenty of people there that are able to be able to walk alongside you at the moment.
Minister, given that Great Barrier is part of Auckland and they are under the level 3 restrictions at the moment, how should they balance it? You mentioned before that the civil defence overrides the COVID restrictions, so they should be listening to the instructions.
That's absolutely correct. So that's absolutely correct. In this circumstance, the civil defence messaging and instructions override the COVID ones for now.
So how does that work? So should they get to high ground, and if they can be 2 metres apart, they do that, but if not?
No. It's for now that is the civil defence response overrides. So get to the highland. That's the thing that we're asking people to do in these circumstances. That's the priority.
Just in terms of rural isolated coastal communities, some are taking higher ground, which is still quite close to the coast. Is the advice to stay there or to move as far inland as possible?
Yeah, look, no, the advice is to get to highland, so the risk has been assessed for those areas that have been asked to evacuate. Between 1 to 3 metres is the expectation that wave may get to. So if they're at high points, that is sufficient. Also, some whānau are going inland, which is also appropriate as well. Did you want to add anything there?
I would just add that going up or going inland, both options are valid, and it depends. What we recommend is to check your local tsunami evacuation plan arrangements. And if it's possible to do that at this point, that is the information that we would like people to follow. But they've done the right thing. They've made themselves safe, and that's exactly the reaction that we wanted to get.
Also, in those communities, I will say, Whati, is that you've got like exceptional stewards like Te Araroa, the firefighters, it's everybody's nannies, uncles, koros are in those trucks telling everybody to get up high, putting them where they know that they should be. You've got people like Ngāti Porou Radio that are on the lines to everybody. Those channels in those particularly rural communities are really interlinked, which is helpful in these times of stress. When that alarm went at 2:29 this morning, those communities were the first to up and mobilise, and they knew exactly what to do, so that's pretty heartening from our perspective.
And videos are just coming out of Tukumaru Bay of first wave. Is this something that you had planned for?
Well, first of all, I would ask that hopefully people aren't getting too close to be able to see that wave, so please do head to the highlands or head inland. We don't want to see anybody at risk of life, but look, that is consistent with what we expect to see over the course of the day, that there will be these surges, and they will move in momentum over time. Bill, you may want to add to that, but that'll be the course of today. Jenna.
Some people who received the cancellation of the warning, but not the actual warning itself. What went wrong there?
Are you referring to the emergency mobile alert? Okay, so we'll have a look afterwards to see if there was anything there in the technical transmission that we can improve on, but there could be a couple of reasons why that would happen. If people are on the fringes of reception and came in and out of that, I don't know. And those messages are punched out through cell phone towers. Sometimes they are on the boundaries on the edges of boundaries as we've defined them for evacuation. So there's a couple of things there to look at. We do make best efforts to get those out to the areas where people need to evacuate, so life safety, not to the areas where where it's a lower level of risk.
Team, as you can appreciate, just that there are a lot of moving pieces at the moment, and we will need to move swiftly. So maybe if there's just the last couple of questions.
Will you update us again in a media conference, and also are you planning on heading out to some of those regions today or tomorrow? Or?
Yeah, well, as you'll know, Jess, it's home, so I want to get home as soon as I can. My bubba's up there and they're all been evacuated. But look, right now we are going to be in, shoulder to shoulder around that operational table for the course of the next day until we can see that there's been some real movement in those levels. When it's appropriate for me to get home, I'll definitely be doing that and meeting up with folks on the ground. In terms of our next media briefing, it will really depend on what happens over the course of the day, I'd say. The Prime Minister obviously as well has a stand-up at 4 o'clock. So we'll work with you to notify. Oh, they're okay. They're all together, they're all together, and that's kind of the state of play for a lot of our families in the regions at the moment. It was a bit of a shock. Trying to work out what to do, but very swiftly people pulled themselves together, got their backpacks, got into the cars, and have by and large congregated either inland or up high, and now watching it all unfold. So really grateful that people are following the safety advice.
Just ask a couple of questions of Mr. Fry. What activity have you seen so far at the coastline? What should Kiwis look at? What should we be expecting? And does the activity in the Kermadex, will that lead to seismic activity actually centred on land in New Zealand?
So the first question, what should the coastal communities be looking out for? I think I would refer to what the CDM groups tell them to do. So what the advice is. So hopefully they're not standing at the coast watching the waves. Hopefully they're in a safe place. What we expect scientifically through the course of the day, we expect a series of waves to come in. Some of the local harbors might even have energy. They might even have waves sloshing around from the earlier earthquakes today. When you get the waves from this 8.1 most recent earthquake superimposed on that, I mean, you can get a lot of wave energy bouncing around. So for some time, especially harbors that we know are susceptible to this sort of effect, they're going to be fluctuating for quite a few hours through the day. Your second question was the likelihood of triggering earthquakes in New Zealand. That's relatively small. So there is always a potential to trigger an earthquake, like we've seen today with these 3 earthquakes. But the likelihood of that happening is relatively minor compared to our overall hazard in New Zealand.
Okay, thank you, team. I will wrap it up now. Cheers.
All right, that is the Minister for Emergency Management, Kiritapu Allen, Roger Ball, who's the National Emergency Management Agency Director, and Bill Fry from GNS wrapping up a press conference from the Beehive Theaterette this morning. So just to reiterate the main points from that press conference this morning, tsunami warnings remain in place for much of our after an 8.1 magnitude earthquake that centred near Rangitahua, the Kermadec Islands, just after 2:30 this morning. We have been advised by the Minister that those warnings are unlikely to be lifted for some time. So if you've moved to higher ground, you've heeded those civil defence warnings and you're waiting at the moment, be prepared to wait for a few hours. This is what Kiritapu Allen said, quote, "The official all clear will be given when we have the advice that it is safe to do so. Do not leave those areas until you have the all." So if you are waiting at high ground at the moment, the advice is to keep on waiting.
And we have also just been told that the Marsden oil refinery, which is at Marsden Point, that has now been evacuated. That's all we know for now. Our reporters will be working on that and we'll bring you more information when we can. Kiritapu Allen also calling it an extraordinary morning with what we've been dealing with, a swarm of earthquakes. She has said people have done the right thing and talking about the timing and the fact that you may be there for a while where that you might get tired and bored, but it's very, very important not to leave.
Yeah.
Stay where you are. There was no way to predict these earthquakes, one of the scientists talked about. They once it had happened, they knew there would be more, but there was no way of predicting that first one. So no timeframes, as Jack said, don't go sightseeing. The first waves that could come through, if at all, could be smaller than what's to come.
We know that from a lot of those high vantage points, things look really at the moment, but that is no reason to leave those points. We're going to get some updates later on from the officials in Wellington this afternoon. It's likely that the warnings could be lifted in a staggered process. So some regions might have the warnings lifted before others, but of course the One News team is right over the story. They're going to be bringing you updates throughout the afternoon. There has been a little bit of confusion though about the warnings that have been issued for Auckland. Shortly before that press conference began, many people in the Auckland region received an alert from Civil Defence on their phones. Our reporter Andrew McFarlane is standing by and has the official advice from Civil Defence officials. Kia ora, Andrew, what can you tell us?
Kia ora, Jack. Well, it's important to know the message for Aucklanders is no, you do not need to be evacuating. And this piece of advice that went through the Civil Defence alert, it's actually advice we've had since early this morning. It's just talking about those strong and unusual currents which will be sighted at Auckland beaches. So really that alert you will have got to your phone if you live in the Auckland region is to just stay away from the water, not to be swimming or not to be going out in a boat either. So that's not an evacuation notice, but more of a watch at this stage.
And Andrew, sorry to interrupt, just to be really clear, that advice applies to people on both coasts in the Auckland region, doesn't it? So it's not just people on the east coast, it's people on both the east and the west coasts.
Yeah, we're talking the west coast of Auckland, Manukau Harbour as well. So those are areas in and around the region. It's not just particular parts. So also, as reiterated there, you will be able to find all that advice on the Civil Defence website. But what's happening there in Auckland, it's not just an Auckland region thing. A lot of beaches in and around New Zealand have got these alerts, just telling people, hey, you probably probably don't need to be going to the water at the moment. You can see a shot there of a pretty empty looking beach. That's Orewa Beach at the moment. And we've got Cheltenham Beach here as well. A few people milling around there, but the advice is don't get in the water, don't be getting in a boat, maybe don't be going fishing. We also had a little bit of extra detail there from the scientists talking about the size of the waves we could be expecting. So in those areas where there's an evacuation notice, those surges could be between 1 to 3 metres. But for those areas elsewhere where those watches are sort of in place, those waves up to about 1 metre. But also you have to remember, we've been told this quite a few times now, those first waves that could arrive aren't necessarily the strongest ones, and these aren't just like a typical wave at the beach, it's a surge, so it's almost a wall of water that comes in. So don't take any chances and stay out of the water.
Kia ora, Andrew. Thank you so much. That is One News reporter Andrew McFarlane. He will bring us all the very latest information from authorities for people in the Auckland region just as soon as it comes to hand.
I was also going to mention, Jack and I were sitting next to each other when those alerts came through. He got one on his phone, I didn't on mine. So just also a good reminder that if you think everybody's getting these alerts, maybe people aren't. So do try and get in touch with people if you can to let them know that Auckland now has a stay away from the coastline warning out, because I do know it's alert level 3 at the moment. A lot of kids are at home and a lot of families are spending a lot of time cycling or being down near the coast to fill in the day. So do let people know if you got it, not everyone did. So do make sure that message keeps getting passed along. We're going to head to Kaitaia now, where evacuations happened a little earlier, and pupils of Kaitaia Abundant Life School are among those being moved. And we got one of their teachers, OP Assam, he's on the phone. Kia ora. How are things going? Oh, sorry, OP, can you hear me? Oh no, so we've lost OP up in Kaitaia. So I've heard a lot of kids have been evacuated to near the airport in Kaitaia. We will try and catch back up with them soon.
Political reporter Mikey Sherman was at the press conference in Wellington at the Beehive Theaterette. She's back with us again now. Tēnā koe, Mikey. What was the standout point for you from the press conference? Really, the information from the Minister at the moment is that if you're waiting in place, it could be some time before those tsunami warnings are lifted.
Kia ora, Jack. Well, yes, that's right. I think that is the big takeaway for those people who are in those areas of concern in regards to safety, those people who are up on higher ground. They would have been waiting to hear just how long perhaps they may be sitting there waiting it out, and it does seem as though they will be there at least perhaps until this afternoon. Of course, as you mentioned earlier, though, the Minister there did talk about perhaps a staggered approach, and that when the risk level in some areas does decline, perhaps they can return to their homes a bit earlier than other areas. So it is just a waiting game. I was interested, though, to hear from the Minister around what sort of food and water supply some of these communities can expect in terms of that support for them as they wait out this time. And of course, she said that she has already been in contact with those civil defence groups on the ground in those communities, ensuring that those support services and supplies stood up for them. So hopefully that was a reassuring message for all of those families, women, men, children who did make the early morning crawl up those hills today and who are now just waiting with bated breath just to see how it all unfolds for them.
And Mikey, I know we asked you this before the press conference starts, but have you any update for us as to the post-cabinet press conference that was scheduled this afternoon to update New Zealanders on the potential change to alert levels?
Look, no update as yet, and as they say, no news is good news, and I think that will be the case for Aucklanders. They will be still wanting to know what does happen with those COVID-19 alert level changes. We are expecting that press conference at 4 p.m. to still go ahead with the Prime Minister to this afternoon, so no doubt the Prime Minister and Cabinet will be meeting just to go over the latest case numbers. If there are any new community cases today, we have seen 5 days now of 0 cases in terms of the community. So, there is a lot of pressure on Cabinet to make a decision around those alert levels. And so I don't think there will be any appetite to perhaps postpone that decision. Of course, things could change if the situation in regards to those currents and surges of the water changes as well. But at this stage, it's very much on track for that 4 p.m. press conference.
Ho, you guys are going to be earning your weekend. That is One News political reporter.
It's my.
Oh, don't say it's your Monday, because that's very dangerous. That's very dangerous.
No, it's my birthday weekend.
Ah, howdy do, kia koe. Thank you so much, Mikey. We will let you get away and hopefully, I don't know, get a slice of carrot cake or something like that while you can. So we're expecting to bring you that latest update on the alert levels that are currently in place for COVID-19 at 4 o'clock this afternoon. That is the current scheduled press conference. That'll also be in the Beehive. But of course, throughout the afternoon, the One News team is going to be bringing you up to date with the very latest for the tsunami warnings that have been issued around Aotearoa. At the moment, there is no indication as to when those warnings might be lifted. We understand they could be staggered, so people in different regions might have their warnings lifted at different times.
Yeah, so the message is really remain where you are. You might get bored, it might get tiring, and you may have little food, but please do stay where you are while the officials look into everything and until they can give clear. We're going to now take a look at how people are reacting around the country, starting in Auckland's Piha, where police have been on the beach. Swells, well, they are looking relatively normal there when these shots are taken.
They're always massive, aren't they?
11:15.
Yeah.
People should stay away from the sea. Need to go out and do some yelling if you are close to the sea at these people, with much of the country under a marine alert where there could be abnormal surges in coastal areas. We're also going to give you some pictures from Toku near Tolaga Bay, north of Gisborne. This video posted online appears to show a swell approaching the shoreline. As you can see, the person who filmed it is at high ground, and we are going to bring you any developments from around the country when we can. Taking a look now at Auckland's Orewa, where earlier this morning stand-up paddle boarders were out. The advice is to stay away now from all Auckland coastal areas, including harbours, estuaries and beaches. Yep, and this is a live shot of Orewa. You can see it's a pretty high tide, but I think high tide was expected about this time today. Nobody there, which is a good thing. And one area under evacuation is Whakatane, where locals have heeded the advice of officials. Many have moved to higher ground, including in nearby Opotiki and Matata. Here's what some in the area told our reporter Sam Calloway.
Well, there's a lot of people up here and we've just evacuated the town. It's like a ghost town. 2:30 in the morning. I live in an apartment down on the riverfront and normally it doesn't shake there, but it was shaking. Yeah,
what
so
did it feel like?
It's pretty scary. It was, yeah.
Oh, well, I was driving towards Whakatane from Ohiwa. I got the alert call on the radio station and on my phone. So coming up here and thinking, oh, well, I'll go down Whakatane and see if this is, safest place, but no, the police just turned me around to come back up here. Wouldn't like to witness today if it is going to come.
No, indeed. So everybody doing the right thing there up high in high ground. Sean Hogan is also on high ground. He's up on Hospital Hill in Napier. Kia ora, Sam. Sean, sorry, a few people around. How's it going where you are?
Yeah, as you said, Melissa, I'm up on Hospital Hill with a lot of Napier residents who have had to come up here just in the last hour, actually, as they've gathered here now as there's been a call to evacuate red tsunami evacuation zones areas in Hawke's Bay. You'll see a lot of high vis behind me, and that's because the Napier port actually sits in one of those zones. So they've evacuated all their staff up here and are waiting it out just to be safe. I understand police and emergency services are going door to door in those red tsunami evacuation zones in Hawke's Bay. But if you know you are in one of those areas, they're likely to be by the beach or riverside that you do get to higher ground immediately. The first earthquake, as we know, woke a lot of New Zealanders up in their thousands, including myself, and it was initially around 2:30 being felt for over a minute. People didn't wait around for that official warning, though. A lot of them got to higher ground, especially in areas like Haumoana on the coast here in Hastings and Hawke's Bay. So they were really taking that message seriously of to evacuate if they feel a long or strong earthquake. They were allowed to go home around 4:30, but as we have seen this morning, things can change rapidly. So I'll just repeat that information that we've had in the last hour, that people in red tsunami evacuation zones, which can be found on the Civil Defence website in Hawke's Bay, are being advised to get to higher ground immediately due to the tsunami risk. But it appears New Zealanders, as you'll see around me, are reacting really well to the messages that the government is putting out and that Civil Defence are putting out, and people are just keeping safe.
Loads of low-lying areas where you are. So what's happening with schools and things? They would be out as well?
Yeah, so the idea is that Hawke's Bay is sort of broken up into a lot of different tsunami evacuation zones. The red ones are more of those low-lying areas near the coastline. You move through to orange and yellow, which are not at risk at the moment. Hawke's Bay Civil Defence have put out that message to evacuate if you are inside one of those red zones. I understand that there are a few sort of coastal schools in the area that have made their way up to the hill or to higher ground or further inland. So the message is really to be aware of what zone you are in, and if you haven't learnt now, it's about time that you did, because these events can happen in the middle of the night, as we know. But yeah, people from businesses to the port have all had to, I guess, scamper up here on the hill just to wait it out. It's hot. People don't know how long they're going to be waiting here, but it's better to be safe than sorry in this situation.
Yeah, just on that, you've got a few people in the background having a bit of fun with you. But just tell me, is everyone prepared? Did people bring up food and things like that? I mean, as you said, and as Kiri Tapu Allen has now said, it could be a long wait.
Yeah, I'm looking around and there tends to be a lot of people with water bottles. There's a lot of the port staff handing those out. A lot of people have managed to grab their lunch boxes before they came up here, so they seem relatively prepared. There's a few people without sun hats though, so I'm expecting a few burnt faces out of this, if nothing.
Yes, a packed lunch would have been a benefit today. Thanks so much, Sean Hogan. We will catch up with you again soon, no doubt.
We're going to make our way up the east coast of the North Island at the moment, from Hawke's Bay up to Whakatane. Whakatane are Sam Kelway. Sam Kelway standing by for us on top of a hill there. Kia ora, Sam. What's happening where you are?
Oh, kia ora, Jack. Well, it's actually quite a peaceful mood up here at the moment. There's probably about 20 to 30 people just waiting and listening on their phones, checking in to find out what is happening. As we heard through that press conference earlier, that, people are told just to sit tight. It is incredibly hot. And in fact, as I made my way down to the car, I had to find some new batteries. Everyone was glued to their phone. They were listening on the radio and they were also watching to see what that press conference was happening. You might see there's also some school kids in the background who are probably getting a little bit bored. I hope you didn't see the bright flashes that went past me. But I was speaking to some of those boys before from Whakatane High School. They'll probably be in trouble with their principal now. And they did say up the road about 2 or 3 k's, there's thousands of kids who have evacuated to that higher zone. So it's good to see that students and teachers are moving to higher ground. Where we are at the moment is at least 30, 40 metres high. To the left of me is the Whakatane River. We saw the tide coming in earlier on, but it wasn't a high tide. There was no rush of water. It was purely just the marine tides taking place. However, when I looked about 20 minutes later, the boats had spun around. So whether there is some activity in the water, hence the experts are telling us to stay out. There could be some movement there, but certainly no waves at this stage.
Okay, thanks for that, Sam. We're just going to take a quick live shot of the beach at Whakatane at the moment. So no obvious unusual signs there in the water at the moment. We have cameras set up right around Aotearoa, so if we do see anything unusual, we will make sure to bring you those pictures just as soon as we have them. And if you are killing time, somewhere safe at the moment, if you're at higher ground waiting on any updates from authorities and you have some interesting pictures from the things you are seeing as you wait out these tsunami warnings, please get in touch with the One News newsroom and we will share them.
And a great thing at the moment is if all we're dealing with is a rogue Whakatane school student running in front of Sam.
I was going to say, it's better to be mooning than to be moving to lower ground at the moment.
Yes, that is a good thing.
Probably better to do neither. But
So we're going to head to Kaitaia now, where evacuations a little earlier. Pupils of Kaitaia Abundant Life School are among those being moved out. We've got one of their teachers, Opi Sam, on the phone. Kia ora, Opi, how are you going?
Talofa, good morning, how are you doing? Or good afternoon.
We're okay, how are you?
Yeah, it's been a busy morning, an exciting Friday, but everything's sort of settled a little bit. The kids were being really kindly hosted by another school up here, Tsunami, I teach at Abundant High School, and the kids are just swapping items, musical items, singing to each other, and just trying to keep the mood positive and look after our little ones who are a little bit upset. But generally, things have calmed down since this morning.
OP, tell me what happened this morning. How did it play out?
Yeah, so around about 9:30, I'm the music teacher at Abundant Life School, so we had music lessons happening and kids going to lessons and stuff. And then at about 9:30, we had an alarm go off in Auckland, and so as a staff, our principal, Mr. Mark Tan, got us together, and we contacted buses, and we got 4 buses, got our whole school onto it. There's about 250 kids, and we moved them up to where Kaitaia Airport is, which is the highest point that's closest to us. So probably took us less than an hour to get the kids on the bus and up to the airport and sort of settling in.
It's a pretty big adventure for a Friday morning, and you mentioned a wee bit of upset amongst some kids. How are they going? Because they're separated from other family at the moment?
Yeah, look, we've got a couple of senior kids, who are from the East Coast. Some of them haven't heard from their families yet, but we're doing the right thing, and hopefully we are, and sort of keeping them with us, and just trying to still get through to their families. And some of our little ones, we've called their parents to let them talk to them on the phone or even on Messenger to sort of FaceTime, and just to try and do what we can to keep them, settled and okay, really.
You sound like you're doing an excellent job, OP. What's the plan for the rest of the day?
No, I'm not sure, really, to be honest. We're just kind of, the kids are at the moment sharing musical items with Aniwaniwa School, going back and forth and just, keeping them hydrated. We're now inside the Aniwaniwa School gym, which is really kind of them to let us. And I think some of the parents have picked up their children and taken them home. And then I guess for us, really, it's just waiting and making sure that we're up to date with all the needs from around the country, and especially for us around this the far north area.
They have said it could be a bit of a long wait. Have you got enough food and supplies?
Yeah, we're sort of in the process of organising more water and cups of tea, and the kids, most of them have their lunch boxes with them, but I think they're getting through them pretty quickly. So we might have to see what else we can source while we're up here waiting, so we'll see how we go.
Oh, it's like me when I bring my work to lunch. It's gone by 10 o'clock, isn't it, OP? We all know what that's like. And what are you seeing around? I know you haven't probably moved much from where you are, but when you travelled to Kaitaia Airport, what was the traffic like? What are you seeing around the area?
Yeah, when we were going from our school up to Kaitaia Airport, the traffic coming into Kaitaia was, of course, unusually heavy. I'm assuming a lot of parents were coming in. Of course, there are other schools around our area, and lots of parents were picking up their kids. So the traffic was pretty heavy at that time, probably between, I'd say, 9:30 and 11, I guess, the initial chaos, I suppose, of the evacuation. Lots of people just basically looking after their families, and, for us as teachers, really was just trying to shift 250 kids safely, on buses up to the airport, and then from there on, we're sort of keeping in touch with their families who may want to come and pick them up.
It sounds like you are doing a tremendous job, OP Assam. Thank you so much for joining us. That's OP Assam. He's a teacher up in Kaitaia, moving 250 kids this morning to safety.
That's a tough gig. At the best of times.
Especially when you've eaten your lunch.
Especially when you've eaten your lunch, and it's always a Friday, isn't it? Just before 11:30 this morning, warnings were extended to people in the Auckland region. They haven't been told to evacuate, but they have been told to stay away from the water. Reporter Logan Church is at North Head on Auckland's North Shore. It's a spectacular spot for watching America's Cup racing at the best of times. But Logan, what are you seeing there at the moment?
Kia ora. Well, there are certainly quite a few people here watching out the eastern coastline, all eyes out to the sea. Actually, down in the beaches this morning, it was pretty much business as usual. People were out and about taking advantage of the beautiful seaside we have here in Auckland. However, of course, at 10:35 this morning, that text notification came out from Civil Defence informing that there was a tsunami threat. Now, while people are not being told to evacuate at this stage, they are being told to stay away from those beaches and those seaside areas around Auckland. We did a bit of a drive-by before, and the beaches are relatively empty, but there were still certainly quite a few people out and about. We've seen some paddleboarders and some dog walkers perhaps haven't got the message just as of yet, but we do understand that the police are out and about telling people to get away from the beaches at this stage. All eyes, I guess, peeled to people's phones and to news outlets trying to figure out exactly what the next steps. But certainly everyone's very calm here, and I guess just looking ahead to see what comes over the next few hours.
The good news is that most people seem to have moved off the beaches. Are you seeing any activity on the water itself? Because where you're located is a perfect vantage point for assessing activity at the port and out in the Hauraki Gulf.
Well, it's certainly quite quiet. As I said before, we can see some paddleboarders, or they might have just moved off before, but there were certainly some people out and about before. But the bays and the seas do seem, at least at this stage, quite quiet. People seem to be heeding that advice to stay away from the beaches and stay away from the coastlines. Of course, as the day progresses, people will be keeping a very close eye on those civil defence alerts and notifications to sort of see what the situation, I guess, gets to as the day goes on.
All right. Thank you so much, Logan. I know you're going to be stationed there for us throughout the afternoon. These are live pictures from Auckland Sky Tower looking northeast to Rangitoto at the moment. It looks like Rangitoto is getting a good drenching right at this minute. It's probably important to point out, in case you're not a geography nerd, that people on both the east and the west coast in the Auckland regions have been told to stay away from the water. So
that's Piha?
Yep, that's Piha, that's Bethels, that's Muriwai, as well as the Hauraki Gulf.
Orewa.
Exactly, yeah.
My thing would be that Jack and I are both sitting here. Jack got the Civil Defence emergency on his phone, the alert, and I didn't. So not everybody is, so do make sure you check in with people. If you think there's a chance that they could be out walking or biking with the kids, make sure you get on your phone tree activated and let some people know. We did have a press conference about an hour ago. Here are the main points from that with Kiri Tapu Allen, the Emergency Management Minister. People who have moved to high ground in affected coastal areas should remain where you are until you're given official all clear.
Officials are warning people to stay off the beaches and out of the water at the moment across large parts of Aotearoa. Make sure out the Civil Defence website for details. That's Civil Defence with a C, civildefence.govt.nz. Severe
sea surges are expected for several hours.
Of today's 3 earthquakes, the first and the third are definitely related, according to scientists, and they may be followed by further earthquakes.
And Auckland hasn't been asked to evacuate, but there is a marine and beach warning. That means stay out of the water and the beaches today. Do not go sightseeing. Here is a list of all places and the estimated times of arrival for any waves. Parts of the west coast of the North Island from Cape Reanga to Ahipara, and the east coast from Cape Reanga to Whangarei, from Matata to Tolaga Bay, including Whakatane and Opotiki and Great Barrier Island. Other areas can expect strong and unusual surges near the shore. Waves may not have hit yet, but reminder, they still could come in the next few hours.
Yeah, those times are the estimates that we received from officials. However, there have been some reports of unusual activity in some of the coastal regions around New Zealand. In Whangarei, we've heard reports of some unusual coastal and tidal movements. At the moment, scientists at NEMA in the Beehive say they're assessing that data, but they're not going to lift warnings until they can be absolutely sure that everyone is safe. If you missed this morning's press conference, this is some of what Emergency Management Minister Kiri Tapu Allen had to say.
Well, kia ora tātou. Tuatahi, first I just want to acknowledge that this has been an extraordinary morning for many New Zealanders up and down the country. From 2:30 this morning, essentially, some people have been up worried about their homes, their families. I've had throughout the course of this morning, I've been briefed by my colleagues here. I have Roger Ball, who is the National Director from the National Emergency Management Agency, and GNS science expert Bill Fry with me as well, who will be able to elaborate on some of the causes for what's happened this morning, as well as the way that the approach to this event has been managed. But first, I do want to acknowledge the people of Te Tairāwhiti, the East Coast, those up in Pewhairangi in the Bay of Islands, those that have had to pick up their homes, pivot and evacuate, and have done so exceptionally well. The messaging was, when it is long or strong, get gone. This morning, whether that was at 2:30 or whether that was later on throughout the course of the morning, we saw New Zealanders literally adhere to that advice. They felt the long or strong earthquakes, and they knew to grab their bag and head into the highlands.
Yes, it sounds like everybody is doing the right thing this morning. A little bit of news that came in half an hour or so ago. The Marsden Point oil refinery has been evacuated in response to the tsunami alert. It's unclear how many staff will move from the location, but it's understood fewer people were on site due to maintenance. Residents have also been advised to get to higher ground in the area. We're going to head to Helen Castles. She is our Northland reporter. She spent the morning with evacuees in Doubtless Bay in Northland. Kia ora, Helen. How are you going?
Yeah, good morning. Well, you might be able to hear that siren in the background. It's been going all morning. Surges have been spotted all up and down the Northland coastline. I'm here at Taipa, up on the hill, where we witnessed a massive surge before, where the sand was literally ripped away. It looks as though it's high tide, but that's a couple of hours away at least.
So how are people handling it up there? I know you're with a crowd of people from earlier today.
Yeah, look, all the schools in the low-lying areas have been evacuated, and that includes some schools that aren't even in a risky spot, and that's simply because a lot of the students there go or live in coastal communities. But the communities are definitely pulling together. There's lots of people just parked up on the hillside, and those that live nearby are bringing them water and food, and yeah, everyone's really just helping one another out.
How many people are up where you are?
Oh, there's a couple of dozen, and I've actually been lucky enough to be invited back to someone's home where I've got a great view, along with all the other people that were evacuated. And Mark Osborne is the generous person here, and he's actually been bringing us water and biscuits, everything that anyone needs.
Oh, that's what you do need at a time like that. Thanks so much, Helen. We will talk to you again soon.
Yeah, we have reporters stationed right around Aotearoa working to get you the very latest as we continue to cover this developing news event. So the advice from the national authorities so far has been that if you are waiting on higher ground, wait in place for the time being, even though earlier today they gave us estimates for when waves or surges might affect different parts of coastal New Zealand. They say the risk isn't over yet, and when they can relax some of those warnings, it may be done in a staggered process. So, for example, different regions might be told things are safe, you can go home, before other regions are. We just need to wait on the official advice from the people in Wellington. At the moment, though, the advice from the National Emergency Management Agency is to move to higher ground if you haven't done so already, because the first wave or the first surge to come through today might not be the strongest. Here's what National Operations Manager Roger Ball had to say.
As I'm sure you are aware, the National Emergency Management Agency issued a tsunami warning this morning following a magnitude 8.1 earthquake northeast of New Zealand near the Kermadec Islands around 9 a.m. The areas under land and marine threat, as the Minister has specified, the following: the west coast of the North Island from Cape Reinga to Ahipara, the east coast of the North Island from Cape Reinga to Whangarei, from Matata to Tolaga Bay, including Whakatane and Opotiki and Great Barrier Island. Strong and unusual currents and unpredictable surges near the shore may be expected in other parts of New Zealand. This could affect beach, harbour, estuary and small boat activities, so we're advising to play it safe. In those areas, people do need to stay off the beach and out of the water. The full list of those areas is relatively extensive. It is on our website on civildefence.govt.nz. The severity of currents and surges will vary over the period this morning that the warning is in effect for. We are advising people to stay out of the water, as I say, including the sea, rivers and estuaries, so that includes not going out in boats. We ask that people do not go sightseeing. This is important. The first wave may not be the largest. Tsunami activity will continue for several hours and the threat must be regarded as real until this warning is cancelled. Evacuation advice overrides the current COVID-19 alert level requirements. Listen to local civil defence authorities and follow any instructions regarding evacuation of your area. If you are told to evacuate, do not stay at home. Stay 2 metres away from other people if you are able to safely do so while you evacuate.
And that was the latest about an hour ago, but we have just been told there has been another large quake in Rangitahua, that's the Kermadec Islands. Our reporter Katie Bradford has more from our Auckland newsroom. Kia ora, Katie.
Good afternoon. Yes, we've just had some information coming in from GNS now. Now that is another 6.2 magnitude earthquake 10 k's deep off the Kermadecs. No news yet. We haven't had any of those warnings come through to tell us where that may be impacting. That may be felt, but that is what's just come in from GNS now. That was at about 12:12 that quake happened.
Okay, thank you, Katie. So a 6.2 magnitude earthquake. It's important to note that that is smaller than each of the 3 earthquakes that affected that region earlier today. That being said, of course, there could well be some more warnings to come through from the officials in Wellington. Have you heard any reports of people feeling this 6.2 magnitude earthquake?
Not yet, and as you said, that is obviously a lot smaller. Possibly good news that it isn't another one of those 8.1 quakes coming in at this stage, but the fact that they're still coming in will be causing concern. We've obviously seen throughout the morning some of those high tide levels, waves. We've got videos coming in, if you've been watching, been seeing, of the waves and the high water around the country. So as more quakes happen, that will be creating more concern. But we have had I've been getting those notifications all morning since 2:30 this morning. And we have not had any more warnings as a result of this quake.
Okay, thank you so much, Katie. I know you're working to bring us the very latest. That's Katie Bradford in the Auckland newsroom. So a 6.2 magnitude earthquake centring near Rangitahua, the Kermadecs, at 12:12 this afternoon. That's smaller than each of the earthquakes this morning. However, we were advised in the press conference with the authorities at the Beehive Theaterette just after 11:30 this morning that there was a significant possibility we would experience some aftershocks from these earthquakes.
And it does show that the situation is still quite active, obviously near the Kermadecs. New Zealand is not the only country with tsunami warnings. A watch has been issued in Hawaii with a threat still being assessed there. Officials are also watching the situation for many on the Pacific Islands. A warning is also in place for Norfolk Island off the coast of Australia, but no threat has been identified for the mainland.
This is the scene in American Samoa this morning, where residents were told to get to higher ground immediately. You can see them moving pretty quickly there. Of course, people all throughout the Pacific are used to getting these warnings from authorities when we experience earthquakes.
And places like Samoa has seen some pretty deadly and devastating tsunamis before. And it was surreal. That's how a resident of Tokomaru Bay, north of Gisborne, has described the sight of a large wave rolling towards the East Coast beach. Claudia Marca had evacuated to higher ground where she captured this video. So I think you can just see the waves surging in from the top of the heads there and coming in through into an inlet. I'm not familiar with that area, so I'm not sure if that's a common sight, but the fact that Claudia has sent this into us would suggest it's not. So as we've been told, there could be these sea surges, unusual activity in the sea, which is why most of Aotearoa New Zealand is at the moment under these alerts to stay away from coastal areas. Even if the wave doesn't look big, it could still tip you or a small child over, and that is the danger as well as anything bigger that could come through.
Claudia's done everything right there. She's at higher ground, so she's heeded the warnings of the authorities, and she sent us the video so we can see exactly what the concerns are about this morning. If you are in a part of New Zealand this morning, morning where you've been told to evacuate, you're waiting at higher ground, you're wondering what to do, make sure if you have some pictures, you can send them through to our One News team and we will be sure to share them. If you see any unusual activity in coastal regions, we'd be interested to share those pictures.
As we know from Kiritapu, Alan, we could be here a while. You could be there a while, wherever you are. The official all clear won't be given until the advice is that it is safe to do so, and that could be some time.
Yeah.
She acknowledged that you could become bored or tired. We do understand that, but do the right thing for the moment and stay at higher ground and don't go sightseeing. For some reason, a lot of us like to flock to the ocean where we hear there's a tsunami alert. It's not worth it. They talked about in the press conference that time saves lives. The alerts were very early. We could still hear the sirens going off in Helen's Live Cross. It still is a situation that we are dealing with currently.
Yeah, and it's likely that they're going to lift these warnings in a staggered process. So it's likely that some parts of New Zealand, the warnings will be lifted, people will be able to go home, while others will have to remain in place for some time until they can be absolutely sure. And as we've just seen in the last half an hour or so, there is no telling whether or not there could be more earthquakes. I know that is a concern a lot of people have. This morning, GNS scientist Bill Fry said there was no warning that any of the quakes that struck this morning would occur. Here's what he told us in that 11:30 press conference.
No, there's no way we can predict when the earthquakes happen. So the first of this morning came without any significant warning. Then after that, when we see a big earthquake like this, we know that we're more likely to see another earthquake after that. So we're particularly vigilant after the first earthquake, looking for the follow-on earthquakes.
Can you explain how the three are connected and why they're doing it? And also maybe a comment on how unusual it is to see earthquakes of this size.
Yeah, so I can comment on how the first and the last are related because we have a pretty good feel for the physics and the science around that. The second middle earthquake, it's a bit more tenuous, so it happened quite far away, I think 1,000 kilometers away from the first earthquake. When we have a big earthquake like the first one at 2 o'clock this morning, we know in the region that's very proximal to that earthquake, the nearby region, we know it's highly likely to have another earthquake. Usually that's not bigger than the first, which is what we've seen today, but it does happen. It's not unexpected. And then when you get farther and farther away, you have to invoke other mechanisms that are a little less certain, certainly in the early hours of a response.
How long have you been doing this and how unusual is this in your experience?
I've been in New Zealand for 13 years responding to large earthquakes and tsunamis. This is the first time we've had this particular sequence, but every sequence we get, it's usually complicated and we usually learn from it, and that's what I expect we'll do today.
Okay, so we're just going to take a quick look at how people around the country are reacting to these tsunami alerts. We'll start in Auckland, that is the rugged west coast of Piha, where police have been on the beach. Swells have been looking relatively normal there when these shots were taken just after 11:15. It's important to note that that is before Aucklanders were given a coastal alert warning to stay away. We now know that you should be staying away from the beach, with much of the country under a marine alert, where there could be abnormal surges in coastal areas. Staying in Auckland to the east coast now, to Orewa, where this morning stand-up paddle boarders were out. Hopefully they've now come in off the water, because you must be staying away. Well, the advice at least is to stay away from all Auckland coastal areas, including harbours, estuaries and beaches.
Yeah, stand-up paddleboarding is bad at the best of times. Today's a really bad day for that. One area that is still under an evacuation order is Whakatane in Bay of Plenty, where locals have heeded the advice of officials. Many moved to higher ground, including in nearby Opotiki and Matata. Here's what some in the area told our reporter Sam Kelway.
Well, there's a lot of people up here and we've just evacuated the town. It's like a ghost town. 2:30 in the morning. I live in an apartment down on the riverfront and normally it doesn't shake there, but it was shaking. Yeah, so it's pretty scary. It was, yeah.
Oh, well, I was driving towards Tsunami from Ohiwa. I got the alert call on the radio station and on my phone. So coming up here and thinking, go down Whakatane, see if this is, safe place. But no, the police just turned me around to come back up here. Wouldn't like to witness today, if it is going to come.
So those are people gathered in Bay of Plenty this morning. We have fresh pictures from a huge surge of water in Tutukaka, which is near Whangarei in Northland. This video was filmed at around midday. We're going to have more information as it comes to hand. But just looking closely there, you can see a significant surge of water coming through. This appears to be the Tutukaka Marina. Anyone who has perhaps gone on an outing with Dive Tutukaka will be familiar with this area. It's a beautiful part of Aotearoa, but clearly boats there affected by a surge. This video came through at about midday today.
And that is an area much like Whangarei, where we've seen those pictures before of the red really surging into it, which proves why we need to stay away from the water, because it might not look dangerous, but actually the currents and unusual surges could be quite strong. We had a press conference at about 11:30. It does seem like the message is the same, but it is a very important message that we must remain where you are. If you're on high ground, stay there and wait it out, I'm afraid.
There's no update as to exactly when those warnings might be lifted at this stage.
Which will be frustrating. But we do have reporter Logan Church. He's at Auckland's North Head, which has a gorgeous view at the best of times of the Waitemata. What's happening up there, Logan?
Well, just have a look at this view behind me. Usually on a day like today, it's very sunny, it's beautiful. The sea behind me would be filled with boats. Today, almost completely empty after that 11:35 text notification that came through from Civil Defence a little bit earlier on today. Quite a few people up here now. Now, while there hasn't been any evacuation orders for this part of Auckland, many people here who live alongside the beach have taken it upon themselves to get to higher ground anyway. We've seen people around here with deck chairs and with books, just keeping a really close eye out to sea, a close eye on the news, a close eye on those notifications coming through from Civil Defence and what is, of course, a very dynamic, changing situation. It would be very fair to say, though, that everyone is very calm, everyone is quite relaxed, and they're following the guidelines as they get them from Civil Defence.
Yeah, so what the people you've talked to, what have they said? We know that Auckland, there is the warning to stay off coastal areas. Obviously, people are coming out to North Head to have a look. What are they saying about the situation?
Well, there's certainly concerns. People up here are, I guess, acting in an abundance of caution. Some have been up here for some time with I guess, a nervous eye on the horizon. Obviously, nothing to see here yet. It's also worth noting that people here are also keeping in mind that Auckland is still technically dealing with a COVID outbreak, so people here still trying to stay a bit apart from each other. But as I said earlier, people have brought up deck chairs. There's a couple just sitting up the hill with their family. There are quite a few dogs running around. So,
can you spin the camera
yes,
around, Logan? Sorry, can you spin the camera around and give us a look at what you're seeing?
Absolutely. Well, we see there's people up here on picnic tables, there's some deck chairs a bit up the hill. People are certainly relaxed, but as I said earlier, really, I guess, acting in an abundance of caution. They don't want to be caught out. There are, of course, many low-lying coastal areas and suburbs around this part of Auckland. Now, as I said before, there's been no evacuation orders other than the text notification earlier today at 11:35 warning people to get away from the beaches, but people here are being careful. Now, if we actually look at the beach behind me, there was a few people earlier, just in the last few minutes, down there on the beach. We can see a couple walking up now. Now, the police have been out and about today, telling people around these areas since that 11:35 notification came out to get away from the beach. We've seen and met some of those people who have instead come up here to keep an eye on what's going on, but certainly a lot quieter out here than it would usually be at this time of day, as people really, I guess, stay tuned to what's happening.
Thanks so much, Logan. We'll catch up with you again soon.
Yeah, Logan Church is with us from North Head. People in the Auckland region being told to stay away from the water at the moment. Just so you know, we've had an update from the Beehive. They were hoping to have a press conference at about 2 o'clock this afternoon. The message we've had is that that press conference is less likely at the moment, but of course, as soon as we get any information from the authorities, we will be sure to pass it on.
So such an evolving situation, isn't it?
This is it, yeah.
Unfortunately for all of you waiting it out, keep waiting.
Keep on waiting. Hurry up and wait. I know a lot of people in Te Waiponamu, the South Island, have been tuning into our coverage throughout the morning on TVNZ1, and I just want to have a quick update for people in coastal regions of the South Island who are wondering how today's warnings affect them. Now, at the moment, no parts of the South Island are under the coastal inundation or flooding or tsunami risks. However, strong and unusual currents and unpredictable surges near the shore have been forecast or are expected in the following areas. Okay, so the west and south coasts of the South Island from Farewell Spit to Pusaja Point, including Westport, Greymouth and Hokitika. The top of the South Island from Farewell Spit to Port Underwood, including Nelson, Picton and the Marlborough Sounds. The east and south coasts of the South Island from the Waipara River to the Rakaia River, including Christchurch and Banks Peninsula, from the Taieri River through to Pusaja Point, including Invercargill and Stewart Island. So basically the warnings there for people in the South Island, Te Waiponamu and Stewart Island, are to just be aware that there could be some unusual coastal activities, there could be some unusual surges and currents over the next few hours, but if we have any more information for people in those areas, we will be sure to bring them to you.
That also includes the Chatham Islands, so they should be watching out for that too. Meanwhile, authorities are praising the public's response after a tsunami warning was issued earlier this morning for a 7.1 magnitude earthquake off the east coast. The quake struck at 2:27, 105 kilometres east of Te Araroa. East Cape locals were asked to evacuate, but tsunami warnings for the area have now been lifted. One seismologist says it's rare to have two large earthquakes like this.
Of course, we've had multiple earthquakes. Just after 12 o'clock, a 6.2 magnitude earthquake was recorded again near the Kermadec Islands. GNS seismologist John Ristow says it's fortunate that none of those earthquakes so far has centred near New Zealand's mainland.
One thing about this earthquake that really helped as far as that's concerned is that it was offshore, about 100 kilometres offshore. Yes, if you had put this earthquake like directly beneath New Zealand, you know, at that depth, there probably would have been quite a bit of damage from it. But being offshore, that you know, that means that even the closest people are at least 100 kilometers or so from the epicenter. Yeah, well, one thing again with earthquakes like this being a deeper earthquake and the type of earthquake it was, they tend not to produce really long-lived, strong aftershock sequences like a Canterbury type aftershock sequence. We have had quite a few. We've had at least 4 magnitude 5 or larger, and a large number of between magnitudes 4 and 5. I think at the moment we've got about 70 aftershocks or so that we've located. There will also be a lot of smaller aftershocks that we can't locate, just being the fact that it's an offshore earthquake. So we can really only locate everything about magnitude 3, 3.5 and larger. But yeah, I wouldn't expect the aftershocks, to continue for weeks or anything. Yeah, it's probably for a few days we'll get aftershocks. Yeah. Well, to have to have them come, you know, like one right after the other like that. Yeah, that is a bit unusual. I mean, earthquakes like the 7.4 near Royal Island, earthquakes of that size around there are not unusual in and of themselves. You know, they happen, you know, every few years, maybe even every couple of years. But yes, to have them sort of bang bang like that doesn't happen very often.
That is scientist John Ristow.
Yeah, Kiri Tapu Island called it this morning an extraordinary morning. Have heard some extraordinary stories from many of you. A teacher in Kaitaia, they organised 4 buses, got 250 children out of Kirikiri rather, and are now having music lessons with another school. You've rung us if you've been watching the water change to a different colour in Whangarei, I think that was. We've heard from you up on Whakatane, up on the lookout there. If you are listening or if you're watching and you want to send us some footage, do that into the newsroom.
Just don't take any risks. It's really important you just remain at higher ground until the authorities give you the all clear.
Send us a message to your mother if you want to, and we'll see if we can play it so she knows you're safe.
If we are crowdsourcing for pictures of unusual coastal activity, then perhaps we can crowdsource for activities to entertain the kids for this afternoon, because I know there will be a lot of people around New Zealand who, as soon as they saw those warnings, went to higher ground and have found themselves now...
And are now trying to do... things to Sam Calloway's camera when he's in a live shot. So we've got cameras all around the place. We've got Sam up in Whakatane, and we've got Helen in Taipa and Sean also in Napier. We are across things here as they develop. We have been told the 2 o'clock press conference that was due to happen may now not be happening. We can't read anything into that. We were told earlier today that this could be a long wait and see situation. They don't want to let anyone converge back into their towns or small Northland towns, which have very low-lying areas and have something happen.
And we know it's stressful. We know it's really stressful. We know it's just another stressor after a very stressful period. We know that parts of Aotearoa are still at level 3 and that every other region is at level 2 for COVID-19 alerts at the moment. So there are a lot of people who are probably already in a heightened state of stress.
That was the other advice today was if you are isolating or if you're sick at home and thought, actually, I'm just going to sit this one out, don't do that. Get on the road to higher ground or move inland. The advice is to ignore the COVID restrictions for the day and get yourself to safety.
Yeah.
But we are still expecting, we've had no change on that so far. We are expecting that at 4 o'clock after Cabinet today, we will also hear about the alert levels.
Yeah, so Cabinet will be meeting to discuss the situation regarding the outbreak in Tāmaki Makaurau over the last week. They're going to make an assessment as to whether or not New Zealand and Auckland can shift alert levels. So we're expecting an update on that at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Of course, we will bring you that update live as soon as we have that information.
Yes, in fact, usually we would be getting the COVID numbers at about now, so I will look that up shortly and see if anything has been released. I'm not sure if we are having a press conference at 1. I don't think so today.
No, we've been told for the time being 4 o'clock will be the update we get from the Prime Minister and the Director General of Health when it comes to the move in COVID alert levels. However, if we have any updates as to the number of cases in New Zealand and indeed in the community, of course we will bring you those as soon as we can. But at the authorities in Wellington are just trying to assess all of the different data points that they're receiving. Earlier today, after those 3 significant earthquakes, the 3 initial significant earthquakes near the Kermadec Islands, there were warnings that indicated potential times for surges or waves to be hitting different parts of New Zealand. Most of those times have now passed. From what we've seen and the information we've received in our newsroom, we haven't received reports of large-scale damage anywhere or anything like that. However, the authorities say it is too early to lift those warnings at this stage. They're waiting until they have more information. They're probably waiting to see the latest impact of the 6.2 magnitude earthquake that occurred just after midday today before they tell anyone who is currently at higher ground under a tsunami warning to move back home.
So if you are just joining us for this One News special, we're live across the country as we still remain on tsunami alert. An earthquake struck at 2:27 a.m, 105 kilometres east of Te Araroa. Evacuation orders are still in place for several areas. People in the following areas should evacuate immediately and move inland or to higher ground. On the west coast of the North Island, from Cape Reinga to Ahipara. Over on the east, people in Cape Reinga and through to Whangarei should also leave now. People from Matata to Tolaga Bay need to evacuate as well, and that includes Whakatane and Opotiki. Great Barrier Island is under the same warning. Anyone who felt the earthquake, long or strong, should also leave their homes. Much of New Zealand is under a marine alert as well. Stay away from the sea. Head to onenews.co.nz or civildefence.gov.nz for more on your area.
Kate Malcolm owns Dive Tutukaka, located on the east coast of Northland, about 45 minutes north of Whangarei. We've been talking to her throughout the morning as she evacuated and made it to higher ground. And we're checking back in with her again now. Kia ora, Kate. Thanks for being with us again. A short while ago, we saw pictures from Tutukaka that suggested the region had been affected by some sort of coastal surge or some strong current. Did you see that? Are you able to tell us anything about that?
Anyone there?
Oh, I think we have a problem connecting with Kate. We will see if we can get that line back up with Kate and see if she can give us the latest information. But we saw a storm surge or some sort of surge coming into Tutukaka and to the marina there.
Kate was talking earlier about how they're well used to this kind of thing. They do drills on it. They are surrounded by low-lying areas as well as quite high points. So they move inland and they're fully briefed. They had all their boats in. She knew that some of them were staying out. We have now been told if your vessel is in deep water water, you should be fine. We're also hearing that Napier Port staff are among those to be evacuated in Hawke's Bay. People living in the red evacuation zone in the region have been advised to head to higher ground. Residents in low-lying areas are being told to stay away from beaches and waterfronts and do stay out of the water. Here's what Napier Port Chief Executive Todd Lawson had to say.
It's been a bit of an interesting morning this morning. We had the shake here last night and across the Hawke's Bay, which woke a lot of people up very early in the morning. And then again, obviously this morning, the unexpected 8.3, I think it was, up in the Kermadec. So we're responding now based on the Civil Defence advisory message that we all got to evacuate the port. We're in the red zone here in Napier. Everyone went to work this morning. Obviously, a lot of talk and chatter about what happened last night. We actually stopped operations last night as well in the middle of the night for a period of time, to make sure everything was safe. And then, the notice came through. Our warning system that we installed at the port a little while ago, we activated that, which is a siren to allow everybody to know what's going on, and then evacuated the port up the hill here at Bluff Hill. It's a big operation. It's a lot of people to advise and let them know what's going on. Luckily, we'd actually run a drill like this several months ago, not long after we installed the Tsunami evacuation system on the port. So today's gone incredibly smoothly. People knew what to do. They calmly exited the port, and as you can see around me, people are sort of comfortably mingling and relaxing in the sun, waiting for the all clear to actually be able to go back down into the port itself. So it's worked really, really well. We're really pleased with how it's worked.
That is Todd Lawson, who is the CEO of the Napier Port. We're going to go back now to Kate Malcolm, who owns Dive Tutukaka, just north of Whangarei. Kia ora, Kate. We saw some pictures that suggested Tutukaka had been affected by some sort of coastal surge over the last hour or so. Are you able to tell us anything about that?
Yes, it's not something that we didn't expect. It's something that we've seen a number of times before with different tsunamis that we've had, the Japanese, the Chilean and a Samoan tsunami. And there's something about the harbour entrance and the marina entrance that just bottlenecks the surge as it comes in. It's quite a wide, narrow entrance, and then a wide harbour, and then it bottlenecks again at the marina entrance. So we knew that there was going to be some surge there. So it's kind of comforting that it's doing exactly as it should do. It's coming in we've been timing the swells coming in. The surge is about 4 to 6 minutes. It comes in and it sucks back out again. The footage that you probably saw was the initial surge coming through. Now it's just settled into a mucky little yucky undertow that's going to be consistent and probably here for the next 12 to 12 hours. Really good reason to not head to the coast. That undertow and that nasty little surge underneath can trip you up.
Yeah, the water looks quite muddy around the marina area in Tutukaka there. So you say that the initial surge came in and then it died off a bit and then it surged again. Is that how it works from your experience?
Yes, it is. It settles into a bit of a pattern. It comes in and then it goes back out again. And then you'll see that it kind of mixes a little bit, the swirly eddies, either at the entrance halfway out to Phillip Island, the bottom gets stirred up quite a lot, and also inside the marina. So it kind of refracts back against itself, and the swirly current that you see on the top is quite different to the undertow that's going to be lurking underneath as well. So it is quite consistent. It will come in and it will come out in a pretty regular manner.
Yeah, it's like a set of lungs, isn't it? In and out, in and out.
The ocean is breathing.
Yeah. From what we've seen from the pictures of that surge in Tutukaka, it looks at this stage like there hasn't been any damage to the vessels that are moored there at the moment. Is that what you're seeing?
Yes, it is. The risk really is sustained current and that strength of current against some of the mooring poles there, the piles. But they have just done a revamp in the marina. So with any luck, they'll have done a good job and they'll hold their course. The other risk really is around trade ropes that are continually against a little bit of a strain that they're not normally under. But the marina management have got all of that under control.
Fantastic. Hey, thank you so much once again for giving us your time. Kia hau maru, stay safe. We'll catch you soon. That is Kate Malcolm from Dive Tutukaka.
Oh, this is a little bit unusual. Our reporter Kristen Hall is currently on the Inter-Islander ferry in the Cook Strait. She's heading to Picton. She's with us now on the phone. Kristen, how are things going there?
Kia
Kia ora, Melissa. I'm just on the Blue Bridge ferry, just a small correction, but we both have been stuck out here just outside of Picton for a little while now. Us on the Blue Bridge ferry, we've been circling this small island about 9 k's out of Picton for about an hour and a half now. We did get a notification a little while ago that the harbour master had closed the port, but just about 2 minutes ago we've heard that it has opened again, and a bit of a cheer went out around the ship as some people were pretty nervous about having to spend all day on the ferry.
Gosh, I bet. What are sea conditions like?
It's actually been really calm. We haven't seen any surges whatsoever, which I think is what helps keep people pretty chilled out. People were mostly just worried about missing deadlines for the truckies, for example, and having a bit of a delay to their holiday. But it's a gorgeous day out here, and we've just had a lovely view going round and around this island.
And what did you get told on board? When did you leave Wellington?
We left Wellington at 8 o'clock this morning, so yeah, it has been a bit of a long ride for us. And yeah, we did get an update kind of late morning saying that obviously this tsunami was going to affect us and that they were going to just keep updating us. So we did get quite a few regular updates, which was good. The Marlborough Civil Defence had put out a warning. I think that they were expecting surges of about 1 metre, so I think it was just a precautionary thing.
And how many of you are on the ferry?
Oh, I'm not sure. There's definitely a few hundred, mix of kind of holiday makers and truckies and things like that. Definitely there was a bit of a queue that started forming when we heard that they weren't sure when we were going to be able to dock, but everyone is looking pretty relaxed now and ready to get into Picton.
It must be a little bit of a surreal situation to find yourself in, Kristen.
Yeah, it is a little bit. I was just on my day off, looking forward to a nice trip to Picton, and had a little bit of a delay, but it sounds like things are a lot worse up north and a lot more nerve-wracking for people up there, so just happy to be able to get in there and that we haven't been too affected down here. Obviously, the crossing can usually be pretty treacherous with the waves and the winds, but it hasn't been the case this time.
And how are staff treating you? Are you getting a free lemonade or anything?
There has been free tea and coffee, yes, for the people that have been waiting for a while. Staff have been lovely, everyone's seeming nice and relaxed. So, yeah, we are all good here on the ferry.
Tēnā pai, Kristen Hall, circling an island outside of Picton.
And enjoying her day off. Auckland's ferry services have been suspended, just so you know, until at least 2 o'clock this afternoon. That is because, of course, a warning is in place for the coastal regions around Auckland. You don't have to evacuate if you're in the Auckland region, but you are advised to stay away from the water. Britomart train station has also been closed due to the possibility of flooding. Until 3 p.m, trains on the Eastern Line will run as far as Panmure, with services to the west, south and Onehunga ending at Newmarket. Emily Lane is a tsunami scientist with NIWA and joins us now from Ōtautahi, Christchurch. Kia ora, Emily. Well, what an extraordinary day it has been. Thank you so much for being with us to share your expertise. Can you just begin by giving us your assessment as to the likelihood we will see significant waves or surges this afternoon?
Kia ora. I think what we're going to see is a continuation of what we've seen so far. It's unlikely to get any bigger than what we've seen so far. There's a very small chance of that, but it's unlikely. So it's probably just going to keep on keeping on for a few more hours yet and slowly sort of peter off.
When do you think then that the risk will be lifted? I'm thinking that the sort of the marine and sea threat is probably going to continue on for at least another sort of 3 or 4 hours. This is, everyone always asks the tsunami scientists, when is it safe? And it's a really hard thing to answer, because
it's slowly, you sort of, the woman from Tutukaka was talking about these surges and coming in and out, and that's what you see. And I mean, she was talking about sort of 4 to 6 minutes, and in many places there has been that. We've also sort of seen sort of more slower ones that have happened over about a half an hour to 3/4 of an hour, and sometimes you get the two of them, so you'll sort of have it going up and down sort of over that same sort of period. And they will slowly get smaller, but it might be that the waves go down a bit and then they come up a bit again. And so this is why we have to be cautious, and we ask people to be patient.
And Emily, from the information you're getting at the moment, what regions have been most affected by surges or waves so far?
It sounds like Great Barrier, sort of north, that sort of that east coast of Northland. I saw a picture from Tokomaru Bay, sort of near Gisborne, of the surge coming in, which again was sort of quite impressive. So I mean, I think it's that sort of east coast of the North Island, which was the places that we were expecting.
Yeah, can you talk us through your expectations after a seismic event of this size and nature centred at the Kermadec, about 1,000 kilometres from New Zealand? What, under normal circumstances, would you expect to see?
I mean, this is pretty much it. I mean, what happens is that, a large part of the seafloor around the Kermadec got lifted up, sort of, 100 kilometres by 50 kilometres or sort of more, and so that lifts the water up above it. And for a tsunami, the whole Pacific Ocean is like a paddly pool. So you can imagine, you throw a rock into a paddly pool and you see waves. When you look at simulations of what happens with tsunami waves, it looks like that. And so they radiate away from the Kermadec, and they get refracted around. So the speed of the wave is dependent on the depth of the water, and it actually causes them to bend around and come back towards New Zealand, because normally they'd sort of, you get the tsunami, the earthquake happens here, and most of them push out like that. But these parts of the wave, some of that energy refracts around and sort of hits New Zealand, and so that's what we're seeing, is these waves that have sort of curved around and come back to the coast.
We're almost exactly an hour now since a 6.2 magnitude earthquake was recorded in a similar place near the Kermadec Islands. Is that likely to cause more coastal surges?
It's unlikely it's unlikely to do anything that we're going to notice, because given that we're already having these waves, and a 6.5 is considerably smaller than an 8. It's sort of a logarithmic scale. So a 6 is actually 100 times smaller than an 8 in terms of the size. And so, yeah, that's just going to be lost in the noise.
And is there a direct relationship between the size of an earthquake and the size of a tsunami or surge?
There's a strong relationship. It's not completely direct, and I mean, this is one of the reasons why we are more cautious. We are more likely to say, these areas, might need to evacuate, and it might turn out that there isn't a big wave, because we know big picture how big it is, but the details of exactly how that seafloor moves can be really important in terms of where you actually get the big waves.
Right.
And so as tsunami scientists, we need to look at, well, what different things might have occurred that caused this, and what might that mean in terms of what you see on the land.
Right.
And so, we sort of look at these, and we look at all of the sort of the worst case that it could cause, and we've got to take all of those and say, well, any of these might happen, because we don't have enough information yet to say this is the one that it is.
Emily, I know some of your colleagues around the world refer to data that is recorded by remote tsunami assessors. So you have essentially buoys sitting out in the middle of the ocean that are able to record ocean currents and movements. How do you get your information when it comes to tidal movements around New Zealand?
Yep, so it sounds like what you're referring to is what we call dart buoys. And so what they do is they actually measure the pressure at the bottom of the ocean, because the pressure is directly related to the height of the wave. And so the problem is you need information about, as I said, we know a tsunami's coming, we don't know how big it is, and a lot of this is happening in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So we've got these dart buoys there, and we can look at how big the tsunami is when it comes over there. And the interesting thing is, in the deep ocean, a tsunami might be quite small. It only might be 10 or 20 centimetres. But the thing is, it's 10 or 20 centimetres over 100 kilometres. And then as you get towards the shore, you can imagine you've got 10 centimetres over 100 kilometres, but it gets squeezed up. And so suddenly that height goes up, and we call that shoaling.
Right.
So, yeah, that's why, we use those dart buoys. So that is one of the information that we get. Also, tsunami gauges on the coast.
Okay, so can you just talk me through how that works? And excuse my naivety, sorry, Emily. Do you have buoys that are located, because we know the Kermadec Trench is an area where we have experienced seismic activity in the past. Do you have buoys located between the Kermadec Trench and the New Zealand mainland, or are you basically using your models to try and work out exactly how tsunamis or storm surges will affect the mainland, and then comparing that with your data as those surges reach the New Zealand shore?
Yep, so we're actually really lucky in that just sort of in the last year or so, New Zealand has put out its own set of tsunami. So we've got a lot more information. We used to rely on some American ones, and then basically they, it's in the middle of the ocean. They broke down, and no one was going to replace them. So we got money through the New Zealand government, and so the NEMA put out buoys out there, and they've only been out there for a year at most. So that's extra information that we've got. And so what we do is we have models based on the earthquake, and we run them. As we start getting information at those dart buoys, we compare the information, what our model says, or our suite of models, because as I said, we're looking at sort of different scenarios. We compare them with the dart buoys, and we try and sort of look at, which of those scenarios fits best with what we're actually seeing really happening. And the same with, we have these coastal tsunami gauges, so North Cape, East Cape, in a range of places. And so as we get information in there, we can compare the models with those. And then sometimes as a next step, we actually tweak those models to try and make them look more, to try and sort of fit what we're seeing is actually happening in reality. So that's why it's an evolving situation, and we might sort of change those threat levels based on what we're seeing from that.
Yeah, it's a complex process, isn't it, Emily? But thank you so much for being with us. I know you're going to try and stick around this afternoon. I think we would all really appreciate it if you're able to, and we can benefit from your expertise. Just to go over a couple of really key points there that Emily made. From the information she and her colleagues have at the moment, they don't expect the surges or the waves to be any worse than what some parts of coastal New Zealand are already expecting. However, they are likely to continue for some time. So they're unlikely to get any bigger, but they are likely to continue for some time, which means we're going to have to wait until we can lift those official alert levels.
So everything seems like it's tracking quite well at the moment. And the other thing that looks like is tracking pretty well is that there has just been the announcement of COVID cases today. There are no new cases of COVID-19 in the community. We're also just looking at some pictures of the moment of a live chopper shot over Auckland, taking a look at the water there. All still looks pretty still as far as I can tell. I'm no marine expert, but things look pretty nice out there and pretty still. Remember, if you are watching and you are in Auckland, please, the advice is to stay away from all coastal areas. Don't forget, we are still also waiting for a decision on alert levels that affects Auckland and the rest of the country. Auckland currently at alert level 3. We should hear about that at 4 o'clock, but anything could happen today. So as I say, these are live pictures just going down.
This is heading north from Albany, I believe. So the helicopter's just taken off from Albany. It's going to be heading north. I don't think you will ever see any part of the Hauraki Gulf or the waters around Auckland as quiet as they are right now. But of course, most boaties clearly taking the advice of the authorities in the Auckland region at the moment, being advised to stay off the water, stay away from the water. There is no need to evacuate from the information we have available at this stage. But at the very least, we have some gorgeous pictures for you as our helicopter brings us these live pictures. We're going to continue to keep you up to date with the very latest on how the tsunami warnings and surges are affecting parts of coastal New Zealand throughout the afternoon.
And that includes going to Sean Hogan, who's up on Hospital Hill in Napier. Kia ora, Sean. How are you going? Have you got some of the lads there?
Yeah, I've got some of the boys from the port down here. I've got Aaron and TK. So those guys have had evacuated up here because they're in one of the tsunami red zones, which are around Hawke's Bay, who, if you are in one of them in Hawke's Bay, it's being advised that you do evacuate and get to higher ground. So the whole port has been shut down for now. And I must correct you, Melissa, and this is my fault, but we are up on Bluff Hill. I had a reader write in to say that I got it wrong with the Hospital Hill, so I'll fully acknowledge that. But we've got Aaron and TK here who have very kindly decided to speak to me on air. Aaron was very keen to be on air, weren't you?
Just come to say hello next time we were on TV.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, good one, Sean.
So we'll talk about the quake this morning. Yeah, it was happened around 2:30 this morning. You felt it, did you?
2:30 this morning. Yeah, one of the biggest quakes I've felt. So yes, around here. So a bit of a shock to the system at 2:30 in the morning, but rolled out with it, and that was it. Came to work this morning. Now everyone was just in the same sort of state of mind, just a bit shocked from it. So. Now we're up here. The port's evacuated, so as you were just saying.
Yeah. So what did you do during the quake? What did you do? Did you think you needed to evacuate or anything?
Nah, not from where I was. Just it did wake me up, but I didn't go running away anywhere. So was a bit of a shock. So wasn't too bad, but enough to wake you up.
Yeah, and TK, you felt it as well where you were. You lovely pronounce the way that you say your town. Could you describe it for me?
Yeah, the metropolis of Wauhiki. Definitely woke up to the earthquake. And I just went and by the kids to make sure they were all right, and then after that we're pretty safe in Wauhiki, so I was able to go back to bed.
Awesome, that's lovely. That's nice for you, isn't it? So you guys came down to the port this morning. It was all clear at that stage. What played out from there, Aaron?
So we got together, had our daily morning meeting, and obviously the earthquake was the topic this morning, just to be aware of how our work area might have changed since the earthquake. So once checking that over, we proceeded with works. But then later in the morning there was that earthquake up in the Kermadec, so things changed and the tsunami warning went out. So the port closed down, and all the staff that are on the port are up here now. So
it's a bit of a trick up here. How'd you guys get up here?
Yeah, we all walked. so a bit of a walk for some people, but we're all up here, and so we're all safe. And yeah.
What's the waiting been like, TK? Has it been okay?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. Actually, the pizza's just turned up, so I'm pretty keen to get stuck into that. But like Aaron was saying, there was a bit of a walk up the hill, and the port has its own kind of emergency system, so the sirens went off and everyone got told to evacuate. So it's a bit of a walk up the hill. There was a few stops along the way, and then but we're pretty safe.
Cool, awesome, guys. Well, as they just said, the pizza has arrived for the staff members, so they're going to get tucking into that. I'm told if I wear high vis, I might be able to sneak a slice myself. So we'll throw back to you guys.
And you probably can have a slice of pizza to celebrate, Sean, because we have just been told while you're interviewing those two that the tsunami alert has been lifted. You can start making your way home if you have gone to high ground or headed inland. Now is the time. You can start to go home, but do also still stay away from coastal areas. We could still see some of that unusual activity, the storm, the surges of sea coming in, so do take care around there. But overall, the country, the alert levels have been lifted.
Yeah, I'll read you the line here from the National Emergency Management Agency. This is current and it replaces all of the previous warnings that were in place, and it affects the whole country. GNS Science has advised the largest waves have now passed. The threat level has been downgraded to a beach and marine threat for all areas that were previously under land and marine threats. That means if you've evacuated to higher ground, you can now return home. All people who evacuated can return. However, as Melissa just said, stay away from water and beach areas until we have any more updates from the officials.
So Graham Leonard is with us. He's a GNS senior scientist. Graham, what a morning so far. You must be feeling it. Yeah. What is the latest information?
Right, well, you just mentioned it. Civil Defence Emergency Management have updated their advisory, so we still have a widespread advisory in effect for strong and unusual currents in the water. So that's I guess that's their key message. From a physical science point of view, just recapping, we've had the 3 largest quakes starting at 2:27 this morning off East Cape. We had a magnitude 7.1. Strongly felt shaking, and tsunami arrivals from that relatively small. And then at 6:41, and more importantly at 8:28 a.m. with a magnitude 8.1 up in the Kermadec, we had a shallow earthquake and a generation of a tsunami, and that's what's caused the tsunami advisory over the morning up until now.
All right, Graham, this is your area of expertise, developing effective response to warning systems, especially for a tsunami. How did we do today?
Well, we've certainly seen an evolution of systems over the last decade, and I'm really pleased to see our geohazard analysts and the National Geohazard Monitoring Centre monitoring that seismic data and analysing the tsunami rapidly. They saw that data as it was coming in each of those earthquakes, and we're working on the tsunami models to provide to emergency management. And we also have, as a country, have implemented emergency mobile alerts, EMA, in the last couple of years, and you saw those EMAs coming out to advise people of that evacuation message from civil defence. More recently, we've seen that in use for COVID, but it is particularly well set up for tsunami because of that rapid ability to reach large swaths of people in affected areas.
To those people, like we've heard locals up north in Mangawhai going out surfing, what's your advice to people that maybe didn't heed the warnings today?
Tsunami are dangerous. We're not talking about shallow wind waves. These are deep whole of water column waves, and they can be very long, minutes or tens of minutes long, with a surging or a withdrawal of the wave. They're often entraining debris or sediment, so they're very dangerous to be in. This is not like being in an ocean wave, and it's a very dangerous thing to be in, even if it's not notably affecting on land beyond the beach. People need to be watching for currents and staying out of the water and heeding those advisories for sure. The other key point here is, with big events like this, we do often see aftershocks, notable aftershocks. So people need to stay well tuned to civil defence in case of any further alerts, especially tsunami alerts.
I know that you'll be all taking some time now to look at the data and things that came through. Are there any lessons to be learnt so far?
We're always learning from new events. Big events like this don't happen every year or even every decade. In the last decade or two, this is quite a unique situation up in that area. So we will learn a vast amount from this. We're already processing that data, understanding this quake, how it relates to the plate boundary, the major fault that it comes from. This is going to be a really very useful learning event, and our scientists will be gathering information from it for a long time to come.
Graham Leonard, GNS Senior Scientist, thank you very much. And what a relief that this is a learning event.
Yeah, a useful learning event. That's an understatement, if ever we heard one. You up to date with the very latest. The evacuation advice for all of New Zealand has been lifted in the last half an hour. GNS scientists say concerns over a tsunami or tidal surge have been lifted. However, if you are in a coastal region, you're advised to stay away from the water until we have further advice. That's it, though, from us and the whole One News team. I think we have all earned a weekend. Until then, kia hau maru, stay safe, and well done to those of you who had to evacuate, doing the right thing this morning, following official.
There'll be a press conference at 4 p.m. when the Prime Minister is expected to announce any changes to the COVID-19 alert levels. Until then, you can head to onenews.co.nz. From us, ka kite anō. We'll see you soon.